Trudi Jacobson from the University of Albany, a distinguished librarian and the head of Information Literacy Department. Trudi is joined by her two UAlbany students, Julian O'Leary, a Chinese and French double major of the class of 2021, and Myles Pressil, a chemistry major of the class of 2024. Our presenters will be sharing about their experience using non-disposable assignments to enhance student engagement. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Amanda and Erin. I'm just going to share my screen and let's see. Okay. I'm sorry for the delay here. Here we go. Okay. All right. So thank you all for being here. And I'd like very much to thank the two students, Julian O'Leary and Myles Pressil, who are here today. Julian is a student in an information literacy course that I am teaching this spring, and Myles was a student in a first-year experience course that I taught last fall. And since the title of the presentation is Enhancing Student Engagement Through Non-Disposable Assignments, I thought you might be interested in hearing from students as to whether they were indeed engaged or not. Okay. So, Okay, so what we have here is a page from Wikipedia, and you may wonder why this is up. But in the information literacy course that I teach, the students actually add content to Wikipedia, and they do so in a very short time frame, and Julian will be talking more about that a bit later. But just as an example of student engagement, and what you can see here is a dashboard from a program that I'm using that I'll speak a little bit more about later. But this is a student from the fall who added content to phonological rule. He added almost 2,000 words. And let me see, there were 6,383 views of his work. So this is definitely what we mean by a non-disposable assignment. Okay. And move forward. Okay. So here, talking about scaffolding, and this was something Dave Jadu mentioned yesterday. If you were in his presentation, he did it by writing the first chapter to provide a model for students. But scaffolding in general is a set of activities that might be tiered, that build upon one another and move students towards sort of increased sophistication in their work. And it provides that structure or support that helps them to move from level to level and to do independent work. Okay. And then the non-disposable assignments. So this is work that has the potential to benefit other students or others more generally, does not need to be students. And generally it involves student choice, creativity, it might involve different media, and it also involves definitely sharing with others. Okay. So some examples of non-disposable assignments: writing or reviewing the course text, writing or rewriting the course textbook. And Veronica Dollar yesterday talked about writing a course textbook in her presentation. Co-creating the course curriculum is another example. Creating or adding to Wikipedia articles, which you'll be hearing about. Creating an informational website, which you will also be hearing about a little bit later. Adding images to online sharing sites, or writing content and publishing issues of course journals. So all different possibilities. Okay. So how do we engage learners? And one thing I wanted to talk about is this article by Patrick Terenzini. He is a distinguished professor emeritus at Penn State. And over the course of a long career, he reviewed over 7,000 research articles to try to find out what types of commonalities there were amongst learning experiences that really enhanced student learning. And he found these elements. So involving encounters with challenging ideas or people, requiring students to really engage with that challenge, providing a supportive environment, so the scaffolding, encouraging active real-world learning, involving other people, and inviting or promoting reflection. So what I am going to be, actually, let me back up a minute here. And I think both Julian and Myles had something that they wanted to add. So Julian, would you like to talk a little bit about this?
Oh yeah, sure. I was just gonna say that I think that this is good because it puts the learning in a place where you can apply it to your life. So it doesn't feel like you're just doing these independent assignments that just go into like maybe a course grade book and then they just add to your kind of independent, like studying that's not connected to the outside world. And I think that this is an interesting model for that, to explore that idea of the like, and encouraging active real world learning is really what I take away from this, where I'm like, yeah, people have the opportunity to do something that puts them in a place where they can see the work being used in a real way, as opposed to just like, oh, I did this assignment, I understand it from this theoretical practice position. Here's something like, you know, this other side of it is like, here's something real that I have to show for what I did.
Thank you, Julian. And Myles.
Yeah, and I think this is very important because especially during the society nowadays and how this world is just, I feel like we all need to just hear each other and really learn from each other instead of learning these things and kind of just let them disappear off our head in one ear out the other. We all need to kind of just learn and hear each other and encourage active learning from all over the world. And I think this will really just help society, especially through times in need and with the pandemic and just in life. So I think I've learned a lot of this from Professor Jacobson's class, because from high school to now is a big difference, because in high school, a lot of times you just learn and you kind of just forget about them, where when I've learned from her class, I was more engaged and a lot of things kind of stuck to me, and it really helped me with my advancement just in learning in life. So.
Okay, thank you. So let me just mention open pedagogy, which often is involved with the non-disposable assignments. And it's a framework for revising the practice of teaching to engage students, which you've just heard about, in actively shaping their learning and contributing to public knowledge. And there's some terminology and sort of differences here. This is actually a definition of open educational practices from EDUCAUSE, but I think it defines open pedagogy really, really well. Often open education practices include other things like open scholarship and OER and other open elements. So going back to Terenzini's elements, there are the occur in supportive environments. I think that's extraordinarily important. I mentioned there's different ways of scaffolding. Modeling is one of them, but I think that helping students to situate their learning and their new experience where they have so much agency in a course is really important. Okay, and so what I'm going to be doing is talking for a little bit about developing a meta-literacy mindset. And I pulled this quote from a chapter from a new book that Tom Mackey and I are writing. It'll be published later this year, that talks about the meta-literacy mindset developing when individuals adopt an open and meditative attitude about their learning. They're curious and analytical, combines an openness to learn individually and in social settings. Myles was talking about that, and being mindful of your own preconceptions and your views and those of others. And then the metacognitive or reflective strategy is also particularly important. So here's an integrated model of the meta-literacy framework with the meta-literate learner at the center. And you'll see that the next ring out includes learning domains. So there's the cognitive, behavioral, affective, and metacognitive. I will come back to those. The next level or ring out is the characteristics, which I'm not going to be talking about today. And then the outer ring are the roles that learners take on. Okay. So the domains, I think very often when we're teaching, we're thinking a lot about the cognitive, what it is students should know, or if we're in a learning situation, what we should know at the end, and the behavioral, what they should be able to do or what we should be able to do. But really important, I think, are the affective. So the emotions that are involved, the attitudes, those could be sort of during the experience or afterwards, and then the metacognitive. So what learners are thinking about their own learning, what is it they still need to learn, that type of thing. Okay. And then there are, well, actually the learner roles. And here there's these individual roles and some additional information about some of them, questions about some of them. But although these are individual roles, they very much overlap sort of in clusters. Julian and I were talking about this, and he mentioned that sort of seeing them as individual roles can be a little bit confusing. And I think he has a very good point there, that thinking about yourself as a researcher, you may also be producing information. You may be communicating it to others. So they work in tandem. Okay. But the idea here is that if you think about yourself as a learner with these roles, you may be more conscious about what it is you're doing, and you may be more successful in taking it on. So that self-awareness is really critical. Myles, would you like to talk a little bit about the roles that you felt you played? You were in a group in the first year experience course creating a zine, and we'll talk more about those later, but you were actually creating something. What roles did you feel like you were taking on?
Well, the role I feel like I took on during my group assignment was the communicator role, because I feel like when we had to communicate with each other, it was kind of hard because we're not in person and in class with each other like a group project was when I normally was in high school. So it was different, but I tried my hardest to text and FaceTime and make phone calls however possible to communicate with my group, and it really worked out well. And I actually still have those relationships with few of my group mates to this day. And I think everything worked out really well with my assignment, and we all kind of split up into different roles, but we all also helped each other out with our own roles kind of at the same time. So it wasn't really individual, it was more like a team thing more likely. So it was really good how everything worked out.
So that interaction, that sort of working with other people was important.
Yes, it was very important for me because just coming back, because my senior year of high school was kind of cut short. So I haven't had those communications for the last few months. So having that for this class meant a lot, and it really was important. And the communications I made with people and friendships so far really lasted well. So everything's been pretty well from that lesson.
Thanks. And then here are the learning objectives. And I just wanted to put these up. I'm not going to really talk about them much, but well, these are the goals. And under the goals, there are a number of different learning objectives, and a few are listed for each of them. But all of these sort of drive meta-literacy and ways that it can be incorporated in a learning experience. Okay, so bringing this one back just one more time, I really was affected by Terenzini's sort of model, but what I wanted to show here were that meta-literacy can scaffold the elements that I just showed. So the roles, the learning objectives, the learning domains can all play a part. And in this slide, it's just an example of one of them. So the encourage active real world learning from Terenzini. Here are the roles that might be important, the learning domains, and then the learning objectives. I did write an article for academia.edu. They have a new series called the Letters series, and I've put together tables for all of Terenzini's elements in that if you're interested. It's not published yet, but should be available soon. Okay. So let me just talk a little bit. This was the project the first year students did in the course. As Myles mentioned, he wasn't seeing his classmates in person. It was a synchronous online course. But I thought it might be helpful for student engagement to create a website that the students in this course could put together for other first year students this year and coming years. And you can see up in the top right, and I'll actually go to the site. Oops. Okay. And can you see the website now?
Yep, we can see it.
Wonderful. Okay. So, so I put together sort of the shell of the site, but all of the content on here was created by the students. And so here, for example, is an FAQ that Jaden, Jonathan, and Forrest put together. And what they did, oh, and all of these pictures were taken by one of the students in the class, a student who was actually on campus. So they came up with questions that they thought that other first year students might have, wrote answers. And what really impressed me was if somebody had a question about the content, they could send a message, and one of the students is monitoring that to answer their questions. I'll come back to the zines in a minute because Myles will be talking about that, but there were some podcasts / videos that students created. And so we added those. So how to communicate effectively or effectively communicate with your professors. Here's just a general one about UAlbany. Okay. And let's see, sorry, I have elements of Zoom, which is covering up things that I am hoping to do here. So let me see if I can get them back. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. Infographics. This was a class assignment. All the students did it, and some were willing to have theirs added to the site. So all different kinds of infographics that the students did. And for the vast majority of them, creating an infographic itself was new, as well as coming up with the content for it. So let me move over to the section on the zines. And Myles, would you like to talk about, I'm going to try to move it up, and would you like me to show yours?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Bye. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll talk to you later before you go.
Okay, so let's see. Can we get to it? All right, it's taking its time. Myles, do you want to take it away?
Yes. So basically my zine with my group, it was about how just ways of how to live a healthy lifestyle in college and just ways that you can manage stress. And we talked about just different things that you could do on campus that that I took some pictures of, and some people took different pictures of. Just you could listen to just music, you can just improve in your studying, you can exercise on campus, you can just take part of many different activities and study groups with others that can help all of us just succeed and just during this rough time during the pandemic. And it was really good working. It was really well. Sorry, it was really good working with my group mates with this project because just we all really worked hard in communicating with each other when it came to this, and we just all had different things that we all brought to the table, whether different things that help each other out. Where for me, I love to listen to music. One of my group mates love to walk to the pond. Another of my group mates just love to just go fishing at their house, and it was just all ended up really well. So I think this zine project really worked out well just for how it helped out incoming freshmen, and it could just help out anybody on campus. And I think it also helped me out because it also made me help communicate and with others, and which I was struggling with at first, but now that I kind of got my feet under myself and everything worked out, this assignment really did help all of us. So
Myles, when you were first given this assignment, what was your initial impression?
So I didn't really know what a zine was, to be honest, until I realized that it could be used as kind of a brochure just around like campus, look like kind of if you really think about it like that, and with pictures. And I thought it was interesting. Something I never did before, and it worked out well, and I would do it again for sure.
Okay, great, thank you. I think Myles had a very open mind to it. There were some who felt a little bit more threatened by it, but by seeing the results, and I think by working in the groups, it worked out well that people didn't have to create one on their own. And there'll be lots of chance for questions on that. I'm trying to get back. Okay, so let me go to the next slide, and that's publishing in Wikipedia, which I mentioned early on in the presentation. This is part of the Wiki Education program that is available to instructors in the United States and Canada. And what you can do in this program is they provide a lot of support. So they provide this dashboard that you're seeing a part of here. It has a timeline where you can set up the assignments for students. They provide all sorts of training materials. You can see what your students are working on. And I'll be having Julian talk about that in a moment. But what I do in this course, it is a 200 level. So it sounds as if it's a sort of lower level undergraduate course, but it is required for students in the philosophy major and in Korean studies and East Asian studies, and occasionally, and Julian can talk about this, Chinese studies, for students to fulfill their information literacy requirement in the major. We also have courses that fulfill this requirement in math and statistics and psychology. So the students that tend to take this course are generally seniors, or this time I have more juniors than usual, but they're students that have a good grasp on their major. So I can ask them to do things that really calls upon the knowledge that they have. I blend the ACRL information literacy framework with the meta-literacy framework, with actually doing some things, including publishing in Wikipedia. So I'm going to move to the next slide and turn it over to Julian.
Yeah, so for me, this class was part of my requirements in my major, but it's a little bit outside of actually the purview of what I study, because I focus on languages. So at first I was a little intimidated by this course, but it's actually been super illuminating for me because it's really interesting to work within a platform where you are actively contributing to something that's a global resource at this point, and you have people helping and working with you that you don't necessarily see, but you have to get into things that can seem intimidating at first. And I actually think I've learned so much about Wikipedia in this course that it's really changed my perspective on it. And I think it kind of gave me a little bit of hope, because Wikipedia is this like living, it's almost like this living organism that's like updated and watched, and there's a big community that works on it all the time. So it's been a very educational, I feel lucky for the opportunity actually to have ended up in this class because of like working with Wikipedia. It's a very interesting place to learn because you're adding, like, for instance, my project is on like these types of, they call them precious scrolls in Chinese. They're a certain type of they're a little bit weird because they're used to teach lessons, but they're like fairy tales basically. And I wouldn't have really learned about it if I hadn't taken this course, but through that, I'm learning so much more, and it's introducing me to other databases and different types of information. So you end up being like, oh, I'm going to edit this resource or edit this article on Wikipedia. And then through that, you end up learning about all these other ways of looking at information. Like, you know, we have the peer-reviewed journals, and Wikipedia teaches you about copyright and the difference between like a Wikipedia or not copyright, but plagiarism and the interpretations of plagiarism. And so there's a ton of like this new way of looking at information that you start using to build your knowledge base. And then when you start putting it on there, you're like, oh, this thing, that thing, I need to be more objective about this. I need to be more specific about this. And then you have, you kind of like, it changes the way you think about things in this active way. And then you start thinking about the meta literacy roles. Like I always think about, if I was teaching the information, how would I be teaching it? And so there's a lot in all of it. And I think that this also for students, it's really valuable because this is a resource that everybody's familiar with, everybody has access to it. And it really allows you to edit something, work on something that is in the real world, which I think is such an important thing for students nowadays, is to like be able to be like, I can apply this. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of people I know who are like, I'm in my major and it's such a stupid major. What am I going to do with this when I'm done? Like, you know, but when you work on things in the real world, you're like, oh no, I learned something, I contributed to something, and here's my work. Here's what I did. And I can use this in the real world now. And I did learn a new skill from this, and I can see where it fits in. It's not like it doesn't feel like a guessing game as much. So I enjoy this type of learning a lot. I think it's really good. And I think it would be interesting to see a way of adopting it more in our lives, in the schooling process. The education process, I should say. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much, Julian. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in learning a little bit more about meta literacy or introducing your students to it, the Meta Literacy Learning Collaborative has created all sorts of open resources that are available. So there's a YouTube channel with items. There is metaliteracy.org, and there's the Meta Literacy in Practice section. Earlier, when I showed the slide with the roles, you saw questions about some of the roles. Those came about because there's a psychology professor at the University at Albany who has really integrated meta literacy into her course. But she said that the roles seemed amorphous to students. And so we went to work and came up with those questions that really sort of helped to shape and frame the idea of the roles. So we're always adding material. And then I just wanted to read a quote, and I've got the very beginning of it here. I thought this speaks very well to what's happening in some of these courses. So open pedagogy is not for the faint of heart, not faint-hearted teachers or faint-hearted students. To some degree, it is like sewing your parachute after you have jumped from the plane. As a professor, you have to put your fate in your students' hands. In order to empower them, you have to trust them and make yourself vulnerable. Open pedagogy only works if you are all falling through space and all sewing the parachute together. But what an amazing feeling when the parachute snaps open and you see the world like you never have before. Thank you. I will stop sharing my screen, and we'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. I'm really appreciative, Trudi, of that, all the background information too, to help us understand sort of where this is, coming from and the foundations that underlie it. I appreciate Myles and Julian's perspective that they offer. And really just that testament to how these non-disposable types of assignments translate and extend beyond the classroom, right? That these are things that, that's what makes them non-disposable, right? That we can have some sort of impact beyond just for our course assignment or for a grade, right? And so there are a couple questions and comments in the chat. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit. Joanne is asking about your Google Sites and if that content is openly licensed.
It is. I really should put the licensing on it, but think about that. You know, I'd need to go back and check specifically with the students to make sure about that. You know, it's available for anyone to use, but for the full definition of open, I'd have to double check that.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you. And Allison made a comment that, you know, others are thinking may be challenging as well. She wants to include Wikipedia in her library teaching activities, but one of the challenges is figuring out where to start with which articles to have the students work on so they don't feel overwhelmed. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I guess it would depend upon the particular students. Julian, you feel more comfortable because you've actually picked a topic you know something about.
Yeah, so I'm actually also working with another student right now and helping her try to find an article to work on as well. The thing about it is that I think the way Professor Jacobson has set up the class is really good because it's either you or Wikipedia, one of you guys, I think it's you, Professor Jacobson, you send us to there are lists of articles that need to be worked on. And Wikipedia, when you're going through this course, Wikipedia teaches you about how to understand the information on Wikipedia's page in terms of what Wikipedia itself is saying about articles and their status. So there are different types of articles on Wikipedia. Like you'll see on some articles on the top right-hand corner, there's a star, I think it is. And that means that the article is a featured article. And you're not really like, for example, if you look up World War II, you're not going to be able to write anything that hasn't already been. You might be able to, but you're going to have a hard time. You're going to be reading a lot of information. You're going to be researching all the time to try to find these kind of unanswered questions, maybe information that hasn't been shared. But if like for mine had very little information written on it, but there was a lot that you could write. There's still more I can add to it basically, because it doesn't give dates. It doesn't give time frames. There's weird things that are missing. But when you look at that page at the bottom of the article, it calls it a stub article. So there's C-class and stub articles. And there is a collection of all these articles on a certain link that Wikipedia will offer you, where you can go through and you can look at all of them and they're categorized and you can go through them and figure out what to work on. I don't think, like, we choose our own articles and we make sure that they meet a certain criteria. So I think that would probably be the best way to do it, because I can't imagine giving the class an article to work on unless there was something that was completely not accounted for on Wikipedia. But then there's also the problem of notability. So if you're going to add something to Wikipedia, it has to have enough information on it existing outside of itself that you can put it on there without being like, without kind of, oh, I'm sorry. Looks like there's, yeah, but yeah, sorry. Does that answer the question for you?
And let me just add a little bit to what Julian said. So yeah, I think that picking your own article, as he said, is really, really important. But if you're working with students who maybe don't feel as confident, so Julian's a senior, you could start with something like adding a reference. So there are places in Wikipedia where references are desperately needed. And so you've got the content, then you just have to do some hunting to find a reference that will fit with it. And for something like that, then you get the practice of actually adding content to Wikipedia, but without it being a larger endeavor.
Okay, it's like the thing is, I was just wondering, sorry, I'm talking out loud. It's just, it's like I'm working with a lot of first year community college students, and I wanted to make sure, I just wanted some advice on like, have you done like any editing stuff with them instead of just citations? Just, I'm talking really basic for my first years, or do you think that's too much?
I haven't used Wikipedia in a first year course. Myles, you weren't involved in this, so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but are there things you think about as a first year student where you might feel more comfortable contributing to Wikipedia? Would it be?
I'm not really sure. Like, what were you gonna say after that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, well, I was, because you're a chemistry major. So, would doing something with chemistry seem a little bit intimidating to you? Or like, would maybe doing something, you said you're really interested in music, would contributing to a music article, something like a personal interest?
Yeah, that chemistry too. That would both chemistry, sports, music. That would all definitely interest me in participating with the Wikipedia and like putting in information there too. That would all definitely be interesting. So I think doing that for freshmen would be pretty cool too. That's what I would be interested in personally.
But Allison, I would suggest if the students had some selection choice, that would make a difference. I have to say, like when Julian writes his article, I'm going to have to trust Julian in what he's writing in his article. He's going to be citing sources, but I know nothing about this topic. And it's the same with the philosophy students. They write, a number of them are extraordinary writers, and they're writing content that I haven't a clue, but they're citing all their sources, and they have the Wikipedia community sort of keeping an eye on it. So I'm going beyond my comfort zone. If I were going to ask people to write about topics I know about, I'd have a rebellion on my hand. Does that help?
And
Yeah, thank you.
I think Julian, you were going to add to that as well.
I was going to say too, though, that also within Wikipedia, they have the sandbox pages. So you could hypothetically have them do projects doing mock Wikipedia pages on the sandbox pages where you have them basically build out a full Wikipedia article or as much of one as you want. And it can function very similarly to the Wikipedia articles, but it's not official. So you don't have to worry about so much of like the content overlap or them not finding, a certain, I think one of the things that's nice about Wikipedia is that you kind of can pick your own article to work on. So you don't have to be worried about like, I'm not interested in this, which I think can be a problem for people if you're being asked to do something like that. Because I will say that like, if I was a first year student, I would be kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready to be editing Wikipedia. But
yeah, and I think the common theme I'm hearing from everyone is the choice, and being able to write from what your experiences or topics that you know something about. Mike put some resources in the chat for us. Mike Daly is from SUNY OER Services, and we appreciate those. One of which is on the categories and how those work in Wikipedia, which are the topics. So that's another way to look at that, is to have students search some of those topics to see what might be something that they could contribute to or research. There was another question about your Google Sites, how to learn more about the zines. And so I put the link directly to the zine section of that site. But also there's a question for Myles from Nancy. Did you work on the first year experience zine as a sophomore or junior or senior? What year were you when you were doing that?
Well, I'm still a freshman now, so I worked on the last fall semester. So I worked on it my freshman year fall semester.
So your very first semester.
Yes.
Great. And it looks like that's all the questions that we're caught up with on the chat, but feel free, if anyone has a question, you're welcome to unmute your microphone to ask. You can also type in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that. We have about 5 more minutes, so we'll take another 1 or 2 if we have them.
I just want to say, Julian, from hearing you speak, you've learned yet another language, Wikipedia-ese.
No, it's true. That's the thing about it that I found really interesting, is I didn't realize that Wikipedia was full of it. That's the thing about it. And also growing up, you're taught that it's not a reliable resource, but now it is. One of the things that's also interesting about Wikipedia is that you learn to trust the internet as opposed to think of it as like, because Wikipedia functions in a way where people do expect it to be reliable now. And it's an interesting way that they kind of, I think, do it, because when you're learning about it, they're kind of like, don't take us too seriously. They even kind of say that, that's sort of implied, but they're like, but don't put anything on here that's not, that you can't back up with other sources, and don't add things that you don't know. And like, it's, so it is interesting. And I think it's actually really important for people to do this. So I would say try to incorporate it if you can.
And they do have that, Erin, I'm sure you put it in the chat, that Wiki Education site. Their blog includes some really interesting short articles from people teaching in a wide range of disciplines and how they're doing it. So I really recommend that.
Absolutely. I popped it in just one more time in case it got buried in there.
Oh, and thank you, Nancy. Does anybody have any questions about meta literacy? For me or for the students?
Hello, this is Rich Watt. I teach at SUNY Orange in the Assistive Technology program. And, you know, Wikipedia sort of became, over the past few semesters, kind of a requirement, kind of like I felt I had to share it because there's so much information on assistive technology there. So I made it a part of my course as an introduction to assistive technology, because it talks about all of the variants that are involved in that content area. So I understand what Julian is saying, and you know, it's great to hear from the students and what they learned, and you know, great job. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Richard.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, you know, I'm just T. Jacobson at albany.edu. If anybody has any questions about the Wiki Education program or anything in the presentation, and I'm happy to refer you to Julian and Myles if you have questions. But really appreciate your engagement and your interest in what it is that we were talking about. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It was good to see some of the conversations and the questions, getting people thinking about how they can incorporate this. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Amanda to close us out today.
Awesome. Thank you for your participation in today's webinar, and thank you for our speakers for sharing your experience and expertise. The full schedule of events happening this week, along with a link to register and view recordings, can be found in the chat. Also, please complete the feedback survey to help us plan for future offerings. That will also be in the chat. And we hope to see you at another Open Ed session this week. Thanks.